We don't have an agenda because there's only one item, and so these guys, two. Well, I mean, we've got two different meetings.
Oh, that's right. That's right. It's
We have one item in both meetings.
Technically, two different meetings, that's correct.
Okay.
So I'll call the meetings to, or the first meeting to order, so for your sake, y'all's sake, my name's Paul Bradley, and I'm the chairman of the planning board, and why don't we just introduce each other? So y'all introduce yourselves to us, and we'll...
I'm Todd Williams with Fulton Water Enterprises, franchisee.
I am Adam McCurry. I'm also with franchisee with Fulton Water Enterprises. We're a KFC Taco Bell franchisee.
And I'm Martin Stankus, I'm on the planning board.
Jeannie Martin. Jerry Story.
Paul Bradley.
Yeah, I'm Ron Buchanan, I'm the zoning administrator here for the town.
I'm Chad Fox.
Oh, sorry, and the police chief, we gotta cut this off.
Which reminds me, thanks for reminding me that. Okay, the first order of business is approval of the minutes from the design meeting from the 13th, where we were considering the Feed a Child building and the setbacks and all that. So any additions or corrections, amendments?
Make a motion to approve.
All right, we have a motion to approve.
I second.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All approve, disapprove, say nay. All right, we're good. So the purpose of this meeting is to review the plans for the project located at 676 West Main Street, Burnsville, North Carolina, pertaining to the design guidelines pursuant to the town Burnsville zoning ordinance. So what we need to do is have a motion and a vote to recommend for or against the certificate of zoning compliance based on the design standards. So I got the design standards here. So any questions that we have to ask the proponents?
I had an interest, this is located on our main street, which the intention is to be more pedestrian oriented and slower traffic. And one thing that helps to accommodate pedestrians is more of a continuous sidewalk. And looking at, rather than using handicap ramps to go down to the driveway, to use a more of a ramp type design for those driveways onto Main Street and Cherry Street, I think it is, where the sidewalk runs continuous. So rather than going down to asphalt and then back up. Because a lot of times when you have a street, and it just ends up being a roller coaster, one handicap after another, and it just is less conducive to pedestrian traffic. If this was having an entrance on 19E, I wouldn't suggest that, because the traffic speed, the design speed of that road is way faster, and you got to get out quick in front of traffic. But on West Main Street, it's much slower and could accommodate that. And I just wanted to see if y'all would be agreeable to go along with something like that.
I'm not following, because typically you like to see, if you have curb and gutter, typically your sidewalk is going to be at that elevation at the height of the gutter, which is 6 to 7 inches higher. And then in order to meet the surface, the surface that the automobile travels over, while at the same time the pedestrian traffic, you have to make that grade change, and that's where you would have your
The entryway that's already there, and I contacted the architect, I think is Mr. Pugh, I believe, the architect firm with this project. The one that's on the Cherry Lane side is sort of already set up, I think, in the manner he's speaking of.
Okay.
To where and I have a photo of that if that would help, but just the grade on both sides of that, the driveway itself comes up to meet the sidewalk itself, rather than having the sidewalk be at a different level.
So you would prefer to see that depressed more, that transition to where it doesn't, you don't have ramps, or well, I say ramps, that doesn't sound like that. But the depression is more gradual.
Yeah, where you don't need a handicap ramp. Because
It
the
actually
sidewalk
meets
is.
the standard without a handicap.
Yeah,
And it's also a texture change, so you've got concrete, which it looks like a sidewalk versus the
truncated
asphalt.
dome, indicators and stuff, so that you've
Right.
got the,
So people approaching it in their automobile recognize that it's a pedestrian
It's a
crossing, so
sidewalk.
it's,
Would a photograph of the other side be helpful? I don't know.
anything that kind of, I don't think that's, anything that we can't.
Again, I think
really
this
accommodate.
is, this is what they're speaking of, if you can see.
yeah, it mainly
This is the
affects your
sidewalk here.
on-site grading because it
This is the.
brings it up a little
ramp
bit.
going up, so the sidewalk stays on one continuous plane, and the drive comes. It might not be the best of pictures, but this is that entrance on the Cherry Lane side of that particular property. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Okay.
Okay,
So you guys are discussing the crosswalks.
Yeah, just,
so you're basically having the grade changes within the gutter.
yeah,
And you keep basically the sidewalk elevated where you're actually, instead of,
there's a,
that elevation will change between pedestrian and automobile traffic is made in the gutter itself as opposed to,
Right.
as opposed to being made in the sidewalk over a distance.
Yes.
yeah. So if you're in a real low car, you want to go slow over that?
Yeah, because you're gonna transition,
Yeah,
what would normally, that gutter is where you would try to channel your water and direct it towards
Right.
storm drainage and
yeah.
things.
I've seen some illustrations where they put a little rubber thing in the gutter that eases the transition, but if you're doing this for the first time, you can do that in the grading and get the site grading correct to accommodate that. It might take a little tweaking on the site plan though. I'm not sure how
Is
much,
Cherry Lane a state maintained road?
that's a good question.
That is a good question. That little intersector between the two, I don't,
I think the right-of-way goes up Cherry Lane a
I
little
feel
ways,
like
but
it
I don't
is
think
because
the
it
road
connects, because
itself.
West Main Street is and 19 is.
Yep, so it
And
could
that
be.
is their main connector between the two, but I'm not 100% positive if that is state maintained or town maintained. If the public works director, do you know, Danny? He's former mayor Danny McIntosh, he probably knows the answer.
My understanding of that is prior to the bypass being built, that was the Ferguson Hill Road,
Correct, yeah.
which was State Road 1339, and
Okay.
it was a state road then, so the town never.
I don't know of anything that's changed that since, do you?
And just as a point of interest, it's not in the city limits, because the town could only annex privately owned property beyond that.
That's right.
And it's not in the city limits. For what difference that makes, it don't make any difference. But since it's not in the city limits, I don't see how the city could be responsible for maintaining it.
I would say that's probably true, probably a state maintenance center.
I'm going with,
It does-
But
With DOT.
NCDOT built
They
the
have any
sidewalk that's
direction
there,
that would-
yeah.
That would override our willingness to do that, that piece I
The only thing is that one that's already there is kind of already to those standards. This is,
If that was
Oh,
acceptable.
yeah, it is good.
Then I see no reason why we
Yeah.
could not see if we could, do the
Have a
same
similar
thing.
at the other
Change
location.
them.
Yeah, that's really what we're asking, is that it just be similar to that.
does this have an interior seating area?
Yes.
Okay. I
It
wasn't
has
quite sure.
seating for, I believe it's 42
Okay.
interior.
Okay.
And then we also have a patio area, which will have a little bit of outdoor seating as well for those folks that may want to enjoy a mile a day or
Yeah.
something.
You might want to think about a connection from the Main Street sidewalk. How do pedestrians get to the front door? And I know you got a parking backup for the drive-in windows, so maybe up at the,
This one? Is this the front one?
That's the south side.
that's the front door, right?
This is the north
This is
side.
your single
This
door,
is
your
the
primary
Oh.
entrance
East
is
side,
here.
west side, that's the west side.
Normally,
Yeah.
that doesn't
Mine's
mean.
not like yours, is it?
No, there's,
Extend the sidewalk to the curb and then slash in there, and then they could get to here. and
oh, the other two are down there.
Adjustments for the grade
Yeah.
change between this elevation
Yeah.
and finished floor elevation,
Yeah, I'm not
which
sure.
is several feet.
Would it?
There's vertical change, yes, there's some vertical change there. But it's, to see if we can make
Is-
that,
is
see
that-
if we can.
Yeah.
Lower?
Yeah.
I think it is.
So, anything else on
all
sidewalks?
I
So that's not something that we can force them to do on the sidewalk as long as.
As long as our
they're-
requirements is they have to meet ADA requirements.
Right, and so
I
your
expressed that
design
to Mr.
meets
Pugh,
that,
that this was a
but it would be
request,
nice-
not necessarily a
Yeah,
requirement. They
it'd be
have to meet ADA requirements.
Yeah,
Perhaps if there's not a way to do it, because we've got to avoid steps from this, would it be possible
Yeah.
that maybe it would be more direct here off of Cherry Street? And then that would mean that cars here exiting off of the drive-through would be able to see
Yeah.
the pedestrians here, as opposed to, they're too busy trying to eat their burrito and not paying
Yeah.
attention to somebody that maybe
Yeah.
decided to walk
Putting the wall
or something like that. It gives just a little more separation so that somebody could maybe, that's
That may be
actually
better for the grade as well,
All
yeah.
right. This I feel like transition-wise, elevation-wise is closer than here, where I think we're gonna have maybe 4, 5, maybe even
Okay.
6 feet of
Yeah,
vertical
I didn't
change
look
and
at the
stuff.
grading
So we'll
too.
have some ramps to build, to make that
Yeah,
ADA compliant.
okay.
But definitely try to incorporate something there.
Yeah, that'd be great.
okay, anything else? All right, any other questions? I've got some I'm gonna bring up, all right, in our design standards on section 810, building materials, finishes, and colors, Number 6 says Cascade colors shall be low reflectance and subtle, neutral, and earth tone colors. High intensity colors, metallic colors, black or fluorescent colors shall not be used. Building trim and accent areas may feature brighter colors, provided that the width of the trim shall not exceed 4 feet. And so I was talking to the gentleman beforehand, and just I feel like that the purple color, which is a brand color, I understand, is a bright color, and especially on the south side and the north side, that those panels to me appear to be significantly more than 4 feet. And so I was just asking them, it wouldn't be an issue with me if it were a more neutral color. But the black and white and the purple for that fairly large area, both on the north side and the south side, to me, are an issue. And so I just asked him if there was any opportunities for different colors, and, well, I'll let you answer for yourselves, rather than telling them what you told me.
I've not had that posed to me for an alternative color in those kind of picture frames. There's some along what would be the elevation that faces West Main Street, the short face, which faces Cherry, and then of course the bypass side as well. The rear of the building is primarily a darker color, which is where the cooler box is. And
Right.
the body of the building is a light gray. It's kind of just a cool gray color. It's not in your tans or taupe families, but it's just kind of a cool gray.
Right.
The color here is
That's the
dark.
earth, it meets the earth tone as far as.
Okay. The dark color that you see there is not black. It's actually a dark gray color that you see as far as the trim
Yeah.
and things like that, and then the picture framing, and then your canopy elements. But definitely the insert, the purple element is it's a color that's been selected. It's actually a color I think called Taco Bell purple. I've not been asked to pursue another color, so off the cuff, I don't know how to answer that, but I can ask and see if that can be pulled back to something. Tell me how that conversation, do I maybe present a couple or 3 different colors as maybe options? The brand's gonna have to tell me that. I'll have to contact
Well, we have,
corporate folks.
this process here is for them to make a
Right.
recommendation. They can make a recommendation with conditions. Again, I'm the one that actually approves or disapproves of the permit, but I'm normally gonna follow the recommendations. They could say, have a recommendation to say, we recommend we will give a recommendation if this color is much more of an earth tone, the zone administrator makes the determination, this is a better color, this is a more earth tone color. If you go to your people and they say, we're going to pull.
I'm not a good at colors. I do well in national enclosures.
Sure, but
So for me to even offer something.
Sure, the
is,
people that you have to ask, if they
Right.
say, this is what it is, then it would be my decision to either approve the project as it is or not. And I'm going to be able to.
One of the things that we did do is that also, although it's not depicted in the elevation sheets, there's what they call a wall washer. It's an LED wall washer which would reside right at the top of those purple elements. And it's a downlight. It actually accentuates. It may make, arguably, I guess it would make the purple appear even brighter. We've already nixed that. We've already cut that out. So these colors are going to be the natural color that daylight allows, or parking lot lights. So we have taken some steps to kind of subdue that a little bit already, but I mean, but we certainly can ask the question, is there an alternative color that the brand could recommend to us?
One of the questions I asked him before the meeting was that he also has the franchise in Spruce Pine, and the color schemes for that, other than the Kentucky Fried Chicken, which is bright red, seemed to me to be much more muted and it still carried the brand and everything. And his response was that's an older design.
It is. I could certainly share with you, that was, they call this particular prototype the Endeavor. The predecessor was, that's actually two ago. The one before this was called the Explorer, the one before it was called the Live Moss, and that's the tans and the orange.
Right.
And seems like it even has a kind of a greenish color. It's just a neutral color palette and things. But anyway, that was what the brand was requiring and approving at that time. And then they've evolved and morphed, and here they have grown and morphed again and things. And some of these colors may become a little bold for certain communities and things because of just keeping a certain palette or.
Yeah, and so I guess that's what I was trying to get at was, are there any other options in terms of colors that are approved by corporate that might be less clashing, so to speak, in the size, particularly on the north and south side of the buildings? It's not as much an issue on the east and west. It's just a panel over the windows. I don't know.
Can I beg off to ask the question of the brand and see what they have to offer and see if they.
Right.
So just to make certain I understand, there's a large section on what would face 19E.
Right.
Where the access door to and there's two expression panels there that look like it's actually artwork that's attached to the building. But that area, that large purple
Yeah,
area,
that's
you would ask to
the
be
artwork.
subdued.
It's got a bell in it.
And tell you what, let me grab a. Make sure I understand what I want to ask here and stuff. So this area,
Right.
you've got an access door to the kitchen here, and this is the drive-through side. So this is what you'd be looking at from West Main Street. This is what you'd be looking at from 19E. So you're asking this panel to see if this can be muted or toned down?
Well, all of the.
Even these over, okay, I misunderstood.
I'm not worried about those, but I would assume whatever panel colors you get approved for these, you would want to be consistent there.
Because I think probably what the brand is going to say is that carry the dark color up in each of these and stuff, and let the relief be the only changes there. If that would be something that might be permissible.
It's
Maybe.
like, the way I read it, it says high-intensity metallic black or fluorescent colors shall not be used. Building trim and accent colors may feature brighter colors provided that the width of the trim does not exceed 4 feet. So I would say then, since black is acceptable, well, it's not acceptable for the main building color. So I don't know that that really helps us that much
So
more.
we can't
as
have
far as
black
the
more than 4 feet either?
Well, that's,
But the color here, this trim color, although, I mean, these are renderings, so they're not, the color.
yeah, it's a gray,
is-
it's a gray.
But it gets to be a dark gray. It is,
And that's true for all the, like that,
Yeah.
okay.
I mean, I could give you I can,
Black's not good.
I don't have it with me, but I can get you a Sherwin-Williams color that we could
I don't
look
think
at.
that's that big an
Cyberspace, I think
improvement
it's
to go
called.
with
It's a
all black.
No,
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah,
So,
that's
yeah.
what I'm
Can
saying.
you define fluorescent color for me?
Say that again?
Can you define fluorescent color for me?
I actually have some shirts that are fluorescent colors. I'm sorry I didn't wear one.
I mean, it says on your thing, fluorescent colors, correct?
It,
What was this, I guess.
Yeah, or fluorescent, it said
what was
high
the spirit
intensity.
Of fluorescent, I mean, when I think about fluorescent, I think about like day glow orange, day glow yellow, the kind
Sure,
of
yeah.
warning colors like folks
That team's
working,
approaching it.
you know, maybe a safety color, kind of related, like you might see on the highway or something like that that's really, draws your attention as a way of avoiding an accident or making somebody stand out.
so I don't know that changing it totally to black would be that much of an improvement. And I'm not saying that what you've got here wouldn't ultimately pass muster even with the larger area because of the construction of the panels and the way they're hung. In fact, that's part of what you and I were talking about this afternoon. Just if there is an option for a less, bright color,
Okay,
we'd like to have the opportunity for you to
okay.
look at that and put that through, but I don't know that we'll make it a condition.
So if they could make a
right now.
recommendation with a request, would that be, like, again, and I'm not speaking for the board, but it's possible they could recommend the project and then just, as a board request, that you make that
Okay.
check to see if see if that's a possibility. That would be one option they could go for if they like.
I think some paint chips would help a lot, so you see the true color.
Because they're bright colors in the buildings around. I mean, the gas station across the place has bright red and bright yellow, but the building itself is all brick. And so the building itself is not, and same thing with the auto zone. They have bright signs, but if you look, they incorporated a brick design for the buildings. And and that's what I liked about the one in Spruce Pine. It had some rock relief in it, which made it a little more toned down and unique in some ways. So anyway,
Is this like
I
a
think we've beat this horse enough.
metal color material or
No, I agree.
the
It's
clapboard?
just-
That's actually like a
Stands
cementitious
out.
board, like Hardy board or Nietzsche High, or there's different brands of stuff, but it's a cementitious.
Is that the same type of material here? but
No,
just-
that's actually a metal,
is it?
standing, well, it's not standing seam. Here, I think it's actually formed panels. We've
Okay.
done it both in natural metal that's left to patina and weather, and then there's another that we kind of prefer because it doesn't leave the rust stains in the drip line,
Yeah.
which is made to look like that, but it's actually a baked-on finish from, but it would look like that.
It
It emulates that, it emulates the aged metal, but without the mess and
Oh,
stuff.
okay.
Sometimes, as the rust in the drip line and
Okay,
stuff.
I was reading it as wood.
No, it's not, but all of the clapboards that you see there are, would be cementitious.
Okay. All right.
Okay, any other thoughts or questions?
I noticed that on this, there's a little ramp right there. That we were talking about.
So everybody good?
Mhm.
All right, so I'd like a motion that we recommend approval, but with the recommendation that the franchisees explore some different color schemes and that they would bring that to Brian, and then if we see something that y'all are acceptable to and that we think fits a little better, we would go with that, but if not, then we would before, we would come back to the
So
old.
just, I know Chad.
I'm trying to
Chad's
figure
got
out a
smoke
way.
coming out of his ears in just a second, so maybe, so
No,
is
you
this
don't have to
a recommendation with a request that they try to tone that down, or is this a recommendation on the condition that they do that? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I think you wanted a condition or a request? I mean,
Because I do know, and again, we're, we in a perfect world, they could go back and check, and then we could have another meeting and have
Right.
all those things, but I know that one of the reasons we're having this meeting is
I know.
there's a time constraint on what development and those types of things, so we're trying to get this project in, so I guess my question would be, again, is it a request, is it a recommendation with a request, or a recommendation with the condition that they make those changes? In other words, if they're not unable to make those changes, is it not
all right,
recommended?
we have one that says it's a condition
I think
as
it's-
opposed to a request. Is that what you guys are thinking, or you think it's,
I could go either way, but.
you go either way?
I feel like you guys are gonna be willing to work with what our requirements are for the town. Even if it's something as, let's say, as small as downsizing from the
That's
4-foot
what I was
panels.
thinking, downsizing
Would
might
that
be
be
a
a
good idea.
possibility? If they don't wanna go
It's
with
still bright though.
a color change, just simply because it's a brand.
Mhm.
Could that be an alternative, to just simply
I
downsize
see your,
the area of the color?
these inserts and things, so.
Well, maybe the
maybe-
guidelines of the town,
Right.
Yeah,
Does that sound?
I mean, that's
does that
not
sound
more than 4 feet, is it?
reasonable?
Distance-wise, or you're talking about height?
In height? Is it supposed to be
would
height or
probably
width?
be
Well, it says,
That's pretty close.
what it actually says is that the width of the trim shall not exceed 4 feet. The width of the trim shall not exceed 4 feet.
Trim is usually,
So, I mean, if you're a carpenter,
I mean, if you had a trim around the door, it would be this way on the
Right.
vertical and this way. on the
right,
horizontal.
so I think you could, I think those over the windows, you could definitely say were within the 3-foot requirement.
Yeah, the scale
3 feet.
seems like it, but
Yeah.
that's something that could work within,
you can look at that, maybe just
or as the paint,
have,
the actual paint
have this
scheme.
piece the same as that.
Do you like it?
I'm not crazy about purple, but it's not about me. I'm afraid it's not about
Okay, so we have,
Oh,
If this is,
Well, if it's,
so the condition would be that they pursue
yeah, yeah.
reducing or using more neutral colors,
Yeah.
and that they will bring that to you, and then this town can accept that or not.
It's too,
Okay.
yeah.
So I just want to be clear,
Yep.
if they go check with who they have and these changes are not possible, you all are not recommending that they develop the project. I
That's
want to make
basically,
sure that
yeah,
that's.
that's the way the wording, if we use it as a condition, then that's what we're saying.
Well, what do you think?
But this again, this allows them 2 options, correct? Either this color scheme or the actual,
Right,
the footprint of the.
right, just,
Taco Bell purple,
yeah.
so.
So those are 2 options that they can
Right.
do.
Okay.
So that would be the condition, that they adjust the size to meet item 6.
Fall within the guidelines or to choose
Right.
the color scheme.
So that's really what we're saying, is that the proposal currently doesn't meet item 6, as far as the width of the panels
Okay.
and the color scheme.
To be clear, no purple at all.
No, we didn't say no purple.
It gives you an option either to
Yeah.
downsize into the requirements of the less than 4 feet trim area around the border areas of the purple, or to change the color scheme
Right.
to something more of an earth tone.
Yes.
Would that be,
Yes.
is that reasonable?
okay.
And-
I understand this, I think I understand the spirit of the
Right.
original thought and stuff there. Seems like the surest and quickest way is to see if the brand has any latitude to offer something that is still in keeping with the brand image.
So just so I'm clear, because I guess they're going to be coming back to me, if they're able to reduce the amount of purple, but still have purple on the building, that is fitting with what you all
Right.
think. Is that correct?
Right.
And that falls within.
And that's consistent with
Choice either.
Section 810, item 6.
Not that their screen's purple.
So they can,
what do you need for your?
I have this condition that either a change of color or that the amount of surface area in that particular color is reduced to that 4-foot trim limit.
Does that sound what you are thinking?
And then we have an option to approve that.
I don't know, it wouldn't come back to us then.
It wouldn't come back.
If they meet those conditions,
Right.
then
Okay,
he
If you go
approves
this
it.
route, you're approving it. If they meet those conditions, then they have your recommendation. If they don't, you don't have your recommendation. That's
And
where
they
you
can
are.
still
Then you're saying you
tell
don't
us we're
recommend if that doesn't occur.
Yes.
blowing smoke, and they're not gonna put any conditions on it, so it's up to them. So you got it?
So you're saying if we don't meet this, we're not approved, correct?
It will come
It's not
back to
up to
me.
us to approve it.
If you all are able to make changes, it will come to me. I'm the one that actually approves, but I will probably wait to see if you can come up with something so that we can meet their recommendation. They recommend, and I'm actually the one who issues the permit. They've issued a conditional recommendation based on the possibility of making either one of these two changes. You all can check to see if those changes are possible. Either way, let me know, and then we can make a decision going forward about whether the permit would be issued or not.
Okay.
So I guess the recommendation goes on forward, or does it get approved here? Does this go to town council?
This doesn't go to town
Okay,
council.
it's
So
somebody
it's
else.
just to him.
Yeah.
Okay,
I misspoke that.
okay,
Yeah, it just goes to, this one just stays here.
okay. And the other item was taking a look at the driveway,
The
sidewalk.
sidewalks, the
Yeah.
transition and the crosshatch.
So does that need to be in our recommendation? I don't know that.
Again, that's not anything that we can require at all.
Right,
So that was a
Right,
request. to
that's a
make that
request, so we
change.
don't need to have that as part of the recommendation. So,
Yeah.
okay,
You got what you need for a vote?
I didn't actually get the vote. Did we make a motion?
Would you care to,
we just were nailing down the language, so if
Okay.
you got the language nailed down, I'll ask for a motion.
Yeah, good.
All right, could I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
And the motion is that we recommend with the condition,
Yeah, I got it.
and you've got the condition, and the condition is to narrow it or,
either reduce the amount of purple within these guidelines or change the color to a more muted tone?
Right,
yeah.
need a second?
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay.
All right, thank you. Fellas, I appreciate it.
Yeah, I really do appreciate your
Thank you
willingness
for-
to listen
thank you
to
for
us.
the dialogue, and
Yeah.
just getting a chance to kind of talk, because this through email is, would be
Yeah.
maddening.
And I understand exactly where you guys are coming from as far as the corporate, and I appreciate that.
Well, we do have a kind of a responsibility to protect the brand. The brand has, their vision about what the brand is supposed to look like and things like that. And even if you'll look at like the Taco Bell, the tombstone shape, how it's evolved over the past 6 or 7 years, it's undergone 3 different redesigns and color reconfigurations and stuff. So the one thing you can count on Taco Bell is that they don't sit still. They keep trying to move and broaden their appeal and things like that. And, well, I think that just makes it.
Do y'all have my contact information? If not, I can certainly provide it for you.
Mhm. Yeah.
If they could find it out.
I know I do, but just, if you're gonna say something, do you have a card?
I didn't bring one as one of my vehicles. I didn't bring one up, but I'll come. If y'all want to go on the next side, it might be, whatever you-
He said it would want to make sense.
just jot it down.
I was gonna thank them
Oh.
for the good.
This is what we're for.
Well, we talked about,
We don't need to.
Well, see, we gotta have something to hang it on.
Yeah, I know.
Item 6, if we didn't have item 6, we
Yeah,
wouldn't have
we
taken
had
care of
to
it.
six.
the
I didn't know it had to be.
was doing it that way, and then putting in a connection from the sidewalk to
That's what I was gonna say.
the internal sidewalk.
Yeah, that is that's repulsive.
Yes.
Thank y'all for
It'll be a
the,
great change.
for your cooperation. I really do appreciate it. And,
Yes, like I said, his name was very, appreciate that,
Thank
sure.
yeah,
Well, we
and-
want to take advantage of being prepared for groundbreaking things here in Yancey County, you gotta think that way and stuff, because a winter ground break is not a good thing and stuff traditionally. Sometimes even down in Morganton and stuff, it's like a baptism by fire.
Now, I have a question. Now, tell the truth. Is the purple because of Mitchell County?
Oh, no, I didn't do that. See, I didn't go to high school with it. But actually, as far as public acceptance, if you can change it, that'd probably help your
If
customer
you want to
base.
see some green, feel free. I mean, no one will be upset.
They'll come back with a bright
You gotta
green
show
this
them
time.
We're gonna go back, and I'll get it right.
That was a good one. I like that.
Just reach
All
out
right,
with anything I can.
let's start our special meeting.
Thanks
Thanks again.
You want us to pull the story?
Paul,
No, it's fine.
were you saying something to us?
Okay, we're gonna close,
You own it, never mind.
we're gonna close the other meeting, so I need a motion to adjourn the other meeting.
Make a motion, we adjourn.
All right, the special meeting for the Design Review Committee, it's been moved to adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, that meeting is adjourned. All right, I'm calling to order the special meeting for the Burnsville Planning Board to consider a draft ordinance relating to floodwater
No.
management. What is it?
Close. Subdivision, this is a revision to the text of our subdivision ordinance. You all received, and we discussed at the last meeting, revisions to our subdivision ordinance. Our current ordinance that is in place at the moment was written in 1969. It is very much outdated at this point. We had made some revisions. From that point, since our last meeting, in which you all recommended the approval to this point, there's been some discussion among, we had shown some of the developers in the area, and the concern was particularly involving stormwater, some of those regulations that were in there for smaller projects, in particular, the process that would go through and how that might impact some of these smaller developments. So as we talked about that, a proposal, some revised text was sent out to you guys on Friday, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
On Friday, showing the original language, the text as it was within that ordinance, and a proposed revision that you all could consider making a recommendation for to the main board, which meets on Thursday. They're gonna have their public hearing and on that. That language had both a provision, it changed the requirements that we involve the division of, I don't want to get the, because their name has changed. It used to be DENR, but it's Department of Environmental Quality. Have them sign off on all plans was the original. This was, the change was moving that to larger projects that were over 5 acres or projects that were on what would be really steep slope, over 25%. The two options you would have at this point would be to approve that text as it is, or if in discussion you all come up with something that you would prefer to recommend to council, you can make a different recommendation for that in itself, or just not recommend changes and leave it as it is. That makes sense. So you either recommend that you leave it the same as we have sent it. I'm getting myself confused.
No, you got it.
This is
Yeah,
a revision to
either-
a revision, but either accept or deny what was proposed to you on Friday, or if in discussion you come up with something you think works better, you can recommend with those changes.
Okay.
I hope I explained that well, because it gets a little confusing.
So we got 3 options in front of us, just to repeat.
pretty
Basically,
much.
we can recommend nothing, which means what's in place right now will stay in place, which
19
is some issues. Right, so I think that
1960
option,
version of stormwater.
Say that one more time.
So that's the 1960 version of stormwater management.
You all have already approved this revision that I have here, which would hope, if it gets approved at the main board, will replace the 69 version. We sent a revision, we'll get this right, because this is difficult. We sent a revision on Friday with that particular portion
Oh, okay.
to consider.
5 acres.
The two options, you would have the option to recommend or not recommend this revision. Or there's always the provision, if you decide we like this change better, you can put in that language and recommend a different revision. Does that make sense? So you're recommending something one way or the other. You're either recommending for or against this, or something with your own language in it.
Are y'all confused, or you got?
Sorry.
No?
We've wrestled with this morning to make sure we got the language
So-
correct.
Basically, the whole plan is going before the board.
Yes.
And we don't have any, that's okay. We've already approved that or recommended approval of that. But there's one item within there
Yes.
that has caused concern to smaller project
Developers, yes.
developers. And that is that everybody has to go to DEQ under what's in there right now. So
Correct.
they would like some relief on that. So they have sent out an option for relief, which would say if it's less than 5 acres, they don't have to go through DEQ. So what's in there would be still in effect for large developments regardless of topography. But if you're under 5 acres and there are not steep slopes involved, then they would not have to go to DEQ.
Paul explained that much better than
Does
this.
So the question that
Is that-
you raised was, if I understand it correctly, was the way the revision came out,
That's very
it was too loosey-goosey in that, it could be very steep in one part and very not steep in one part, but the average meets the criteria. So basically what he's opened the door is we can approve the language that they currently have, that they sent out to us to adjust that 5 acre, or we can manipulate that or tie that down a little bit if we have something specific we want to require.
Well, is that
Or
what this
do,
means right here then?
The 25%, right.
Plan?
Yeah, the 25%
It would have to
slope.
slope, yeah.
Right, and so the average, and so I think the issue is that there are a lot of ways that average could be presented, and therefore it could create some issues down the line in terms of whether or not they would have to go to DEQ. And I think we talked about it this afternoon, and we agreed that that's the case, but we also don't want to delay the whole plan being approved by town council. And even if we put the new language in there now, it'd be better than what we've currently got,
True.
which is,
Yeah.
all they have to do is submit a plan and whatever
So
goes on, and,
Their main concern is having to go to DEQ for a
right.
2-lot subdivision.
So I would like us to consider, did y'all talked about some alternative language. Did y'all ever come up with
I
anything?
had, in some of our conversation today, there was some concern over that 25%, whether that was an average, whether that was appropriate. And we've also talked about how we don't have any type of steep slope regulations. Some communities do, that maybe discussing slope in general would be something the planning board might take on and tackle as a larger, we have a workshop coming up at the end of the month, and an option there that if that's a goal the planning board wants to take on, to look into some of that stuff, maybe that's something we take on. So it's possible maybe we can just pull the 25%, the 25% slope language out and just leave it as the differentiation at the moment being whether it's a large project, an over 5 acre project, or an under 5 acre project, whether it's a large or small project.
You follow that? Good job.
So if it's 5 acres or more,
They would have
but
to,
it's
they would still have to,
different,
they would still have to go through and submit that plan to DEQ.
No matter
with
how,
either- with
No
either
matter
one,
how?
Yes.
no matter what the slope. It's big
Okay.
enough that
Yes.
they've got to go to DEQ.
okay.
This is
So-
sort of putting in an exception for smaller subdivisions, so they don't have to go through the same process as a large one, is
Okay.
basically.
So we could take the 25% out, or the way, that part of that proposed language, and just have it be size determined. If it's less than 5 acres, they don't have to go to DEQ. If it's more than 5 acres, they do.
And I've
And-
typed up some language for that, if that's helpful.
And then leave the door open for us to address slope in general, on on its own.
On its own.
Yeah, but-
And then,
DEQ require for submittal to them Do they have a standard or anything? Or
Yeah, they have state standards for your
We're
stormwater, how
not
much.
gonna go beyond, we're not gonna, like, hey, you can't do that.
Right.
We don't want that to
And
happen.
one point about all this is all this still, there is still that whole process of different town entities that have to prove, the zoning administrator, it's not like we just say you don't have to have a plan, even if it's a small subdivision, they have to have a plan, and it's gotta go through myself, currently the public works director, there are still those pieces in place to check on this to make sure they're not just doing anything.
Right.
The concern they had was going through that whole state requirement and getting their approval for smaller projects might be difficult. That was the reason we're all sitting here now.
Well, I can see the need for the 25% simply because most of the buildable property at this point is on a slope,
Yeah.
given the layout of Burnsville and the area, so they can understand that. And the runoff situation, we do have problems with that, and we're still struggling with some issues with that. But that could be fine-tuned to any individual
And there's,
project, correct? I
you know,
mean,
the language we have in there, it does include the 25%. You could leave that and then visit, that nothing sets that in stone forever and ever. You know, if you decide to take that on, you know, slope issues, you can pass something, you know, and work on something that the board may pass down the road that controls slope even further with those types of runoff. That would be another option, is to pass it as, you know, which.
Pass it as is, but also let them know that we have some concerns about the clarity of that 25%, and that we would like to explore, and that we're going to be exploring some ways to correct that.
Yeah, how that's interpreted.
Yeah.
I mean, you can do it, I wasn't sure how to interpret it. It was going various ways, you know. So, that was my concern.
Well, I think it was, I mean, it's,
And I think we probably ought to, you know, look at a steep slope ordinance for the town.
Yeah, we can put that on as a topic for discussion with that workshop coming up at the end of the month.
All our hillsides are
I think that's a good idea.
All right.
Yes.
visible.
let's do that, is put that on our agenda for the work session.
We
Yeah,
can certainly do that.
'cause all properties
So the
different.
question I guess that we have to resolve right now is,
Oh.
can we just leave the 25% slope in there now, and recommend approval as is with the recommended change, and just the comment that there needs to be some clarification work done on the steep slope element of that, and that
Well, when you-
we'll take that on.
You know, when you review the plans, you'll be considering how you interpret it, the 25%, or should it be 15%? Is
Right.
that too limiting? I mean, 15% is a slope that you typically avoid, you don't want to develop, but around here, it's a little different.
Yeah.
Everything's over 15% slope
Yeah.
around here. There's not a lot less than 15%.
Right.
Unless you're in the floodplain.
Nashville.
If you're in the floodplain, you might be.
Yeah, then we got a whole other set
They're on
of issues.
45% slopes in Nashville.
Yeah, I think that would.
But it causes a lot of grading when you deal with that, and it can really scar up the hillsides, and you lose some of the natural beauty that you have when you do that. So I guess if it comes down to a point where a developer wants to take it to the max in his interpretation, and you have your interpretation, which is a little more restrictive, where would that end up? In front of council?
Yeah, they would be appealing my decision that they didn't like, and council would be the ultimate arbiter on that.
He's willing
It would become a larger issue.
Mhm.
Okay. Well, in the short term, maybe that's a way to deal with it, to at least get some standards in there that will help somewhat, and then looking at a steep slope ordinance will provide more guidance.
And that would kind of take it on a project by project basis, I mean, correct, because then you would have to work in tandem with the engineer's report and what that kind of is structured with the DOT, and if they're involved in, of course, the zoning and public works.
Oh, yeah. again, there's a lot of other people that are gonna be looking at each of these projects as they come through. I just know that there are some talks of developments in the future, and I hate to see us continue on and on forever with these, older ordinances that have kind of been outdated.
Yeah, the wordage and
It can cause
needs to be changed that for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, when I was looking at this, I was like, because I don't know anything about storm management and grading too much. So I had a friend who I sent it to, just, you know, he's spent 30 years in both public and private sector dealing with stormwater management, and asked him, what do you think of this? Get his ideas. And I didn't send it to everybody because I didn't know.
I saw it.
Yeah, he saw it, and I can send it to y'all too, if you'd like, or maybe you could forward it to him.
I'd be happy to if you wanted.
I wasn't sure of the protocol, and I wasn't sure if you got it. Did you get it?
I've
Okay.
got a copy here.
Okay. Yeah, and so he had some much more involved look at it all and how to interpret those things. So he was a big help.
So the question is, do we want to leave the 25% in? And so we basically recommend approval of the language that you've proposed, or take the 25% out, which basically just makes it a size determination on whether it goes to DEQ or not. I think the 25% in at least gives him a little more handle on a rationale for dealing with steep slopes when they're doing a stormwater plan, because they're required to do a plan. And so it gives him a little more teeth to deal with the steeper slopes. And then at our work session, we can take on the broader question and maybe refine that definition a little bit, so it's easier to interpret.
Yeah, define this.
Okay,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
is that
So is
clear
there
to
a
you?
motion on a recommendation?
Yep, just a motion to
Yeah,
the
I
effect.
recommend with a little more clarification of how to interpret the 25%, just so it's clear, the average.
So the recommendation, the proposal is we recommend approval of the language as submitted, and just with a note to town council that, that we're gonna be working on
You guys
this,
jumping
on the
in
slope
steep slopes?
issue, so it'll make it easier for you, hopefully.
Did you make a motion? Did you make that
Yeah,
motion?
I'll make that.
Okay, I need a second.
I'll second that.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Have we done everything we need to do, guys? All right.
Is that it?
There being no more business, entertain a motion to adjourn the special meeting for the planning board.
I make a motion, we adjourn.
All right.
Second.
All right.
All
Thank
in
you, guys. I
favor?
appreciate the special meeting to accommodate those gentlemen. They're looking to break ground soon, so they are.
I appreciate their willingness